Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Provincial Office webinar. I hope you're all safe and well. My name's Andrew Rydell, and I'm the Provincial Deputy Grand Secretary. So, to today's session, the Provincial DCs are some of the hardest working masons in the province, and they probably argue the hardest working masons in the province. Always meticulously prepared and with their heads well and truly above the parapet. So to tell us more about the role and well, anything he wants really, it's a pleasure to welcome Malcolm Bell, Provincial Grand Director of Ceremonies, or as we like to call him, he who must be obeyed. Malcolm, good afternoon and welcome. I hope you're well. How have you been spending your lockdown?
Well, as you know, I was in the police. I've just retired actually on Saturday. So I'm now retired, but my working life has continued as normal, really. So there's not been a lot of change. But Masonically, there's been a lot of planning, preparations, chops and changes to things. So I have been busy Masonically, as I'm sure a lot of lodge secretaries and a lot of lodge DCs have as well.
It's been an interesting time for us in the provincial office in terms of the principal guests, representatives, and sorting out installations, etc. I can imagine that you've been tearing your hair out. Well, that's an unfortunate turn of phrase, isn't it? Even more than I have. I started lockdown with hair and finished it without it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's obviously with the ongoing virus and the government advice, we are led really by the government advice. So it's difficult for us to plan much beyond a week because that advice has been changing all the time. So we're planning for meetings, how we can get lodges back, give them the advice. Obviously that has to be tailored to the government advice, which ultimately is has to be obeyed as such. So it really is difficult. But I know the Masonic calls have done an absolutely fantastic job in producing risk assessments and finding out how they can really open up to welcome individual lodges back into the fold.
There are definitely some halls which have been working hard. I was installed as Z of Curtin with Withy chapter at Ormskirk Masonic Hall last week, and the work that they've done to make sure the hall is open is extraordinary and exemplary, and it really is good to see it. So I absolutely concur with what you're saying there. I was just wondering, would it be possible for you to just kind of run through what the preparation you'd go through for maybe a team visit or a visit with the chief or the deputy prior to a meeting, kind of how long before it starts and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, first of all, I'll say hello to everyone. I'm sure most people who are on the site know me and know me quite well, and know what the DC of the province and the Dep DCs of the province do. But basically, what we normally do, if we're attending on the Provincial Grand Master for an installation meeting, I'll write to the lodge, usually 2 months, 6 weeks before the meeting, just to tell them that we're coming, what we require of the lodge secretary, because we need the names of the grand officers attending, the acting officers that are attending, and also the senior provincial grand officer who's attending. We need those names for salutations, wine takings, orders of procession into the lodge, orders of procession out of the lodge, and also so we can reserve seats, because as you can appreciate, if we bring in 20 people into the lodge, once the lodge is open and gone up to the 3rd degree, the last thing we want is to go into the lodge and there's nowhere for them to sit. So that's why we reserve the seating, and that's why we really need those names. Also, as you can appreciate, a lot of the time we can be out 3, 4, even 5 nights a week. So we have a lot of preparation to do, a lot of names to learn, and that's why we give you 6 weeks notice to see what information we can get back, and so we can do the planning for the meetings.
I think it's one of the clear differences of this province and others, the professionalism of the DCs, not in necessarily in their demeanour or how they present themselves, but in that preparation and generally speaking, all the names are there and they are memorized and with the ranks as well. And I know it's slightly annoying for a provincial secretary to say this, but generally speaking, they're right as well, which makes it it really is a testament to the work that you do. So, what kind of build up do you have to it? How are you identified in the first place? How do you get feedback from group chairman, local assistants as to who might make a good DC, provincial DC, and then how does that process work in terms of selection?
It's quite interesting, really. I mean, obviously, we're always on the lookout for potential DCs of the province, and there's certain criteria. Obviously, you've got to be a good DC. Being the DC of your lodge or your chapter is probably very important. But also, you've got to have the time, which is massive. As I say, most of the DEP DCs on a normal pre-COVID year can be out 60 to 80 times in the Masonic season. So you can see the time constraints that has. And obviously we've got the largest province in the under UGLE, geographically speaking. So the areas we cover are absolutely huge. So a lot of the time we can be printing off reserve notices at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the morning, getting ready and leaving the house at 12 o'clock. So we can get to an installation which might be starting in Barrow at 3 o'clock. So as I say, not only have they got to be a good DC, they've also got to have the time, and it does restrict quite a few people from taking it all on. But one of the things I've asked all the assistant provincial Grand Masters and the group chairman to do is, if they have anybody within their group system who has the potential to be a good DC of the province, please let me know. I've got a spreadsheet. We'll try and get them watched to see how they work. And then obviously, if we think they're suitable, I'll approach them, have a chat with them, have an interview with them. And then it's a case then of basically a revolving door as well, because we can only appoint one a year. And what I do try and do is appoint geographic areas. So north, because the last thing we want to be doing 4 or 5 nights a week is driving up to Barrow. I mean, Barrow's an absolutely fantastic place, and they love the masonry up there, as you know, Andrew. But if somebody's travelling from Widnes, all that distance, so we do like to try and spread it about where we can. It's not always possible, but if I can, that's what I've been working on, and that's what I've been working on. But ultimately, it's down to the recommendations of assistant provincial Grand Masters and group chairman. It's difficult for a DC, either the provincial DCs or one of the deputy DCs, to recommend anyone, because usually when we're out, we take over the proceedings as such, so we don't really get to see a lodge DC work as such, which is a shame, but that's just the nature of the beast.
It's also a big commitment, because it's essentially 6 years plus, isn't it?
It's six years plus. Unlike a lot of other provinces, we do it on a 6-year basis. So you have 3 in the craft, and then you move on to the Royal Arch, where you do your 3 years then. But we don't stop. There's still past provincial DCs or deputy DCs of the province, Neil McSimons, for instance. who still take on meetings, because as you can appreciate, we've got 330 lodges, a lot of chapters. There's a lot of work for us to be doing with the installations, 50th, banner dedications, lodge centenaries. So we're very busy. So we need to use that pool of the mess DCs. So even once your time in the Royal Arch is finished and you drop off the perch, you continue being a deputy DC of the province and still going out there and still assisting the mess where you can.
What do you find the hardest part of your role?
The hardest part of the role, to be honest, now it's the paperwork side and the organisational side. Obviously, the amount of emails I get asking questions, and it's very time consuming, because obviously, first of all, you want to know that what you respond is correct. Because believe me, people take you at your word. So if you type something in which isn't correct, which is slightly off kilter, believe me, they'll pounce on it, because half the time, before they ask the question, they know the answer. So that's one of the most difficult things at the moment, the amount of paperwork that I have to do. When I was a deputy DC, obviously, all you had to do really was worry about the organisational side of a lodge that you're attending for a 50th or a banner dedication. But now I have the provincial grand meetings to organise, provincial grand ball. Obviously, a lot of work has gone into chopping and changing procedures slightly for the new web page. So the hardest part is probably the paperwork.
I suppose the flip side to that question is, what's the thing you enjoy most about it? And I assume it's not necessarily the free dinner.
I was going to say the food, yeah. To be honest, the best part of the job, and this is probably where we are on an advantage from the assistant provincial grand masters, because we get all over the province on a regular basis. So you get to meet a lot of people in a lot of Masonic halls on a regular basis, and you make a lot of friends, where even a lot of the assistants are only known within their own patch. So that's one of the best things about it. Also, to be honest, I will blow the trumpet of West Lancashire and our provincial procedures. If you go to other provinces, have a look at the DCs, the DC of the province, and to be honest, they're not a patch on us. They're not a patch on us, and that gives you a lot of satisfaction when you're at a meeting. It goes well, and all that hard work that you put in basically shows the province and shows the DCs in a good light, and that's satisfying as well.
Obviously, you've just retired from the police. I can think of at least one other deputy DC at the moment who was in the police. Well, two actually. Is there something about bringing in the kind of discipline from those police or military roles that helps to be a good DC? What kind of skills have you brought in from your professional career into the team?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of it is obviously with a background in the police, it allows you how to talk to people and talk to them on the level which they're comfortable with. So you get very good at judging people, weighing up how they are and how you should approach them. Because the last thing we want to do as provincial DCs, we're not there to come into the lodge, take over, stop you enjoying your meeting, stop you doing your traditions and the things that you've always done. We're not there to do that. We're there basically to help the proceedings, bring hopefully a bit of pageantry to it, and make sure it goes well. So one of the good things is, as I say, we are used to speaking to people and dealing with people on a one-to-one basis. does help with the discipline. Obviously, timekeeping is massively important. It really is massively important. We can't be late. Obviously, there are circumstances, accidents on the motorway, things like that, where we can't be there. But normally, we're there an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours before the meeting starts, so we can go through rehearsals, practices. So timekeeping's essential, and that's one thing, obviously, that you get with a military or a police background. So they certainly do help.
There's been quite a few changes, subtle changes to kind of how we've done things, particularly in relation to timings and length of speeches and things like that. How much of an influence do you have upon that kind of thing, and how does it? What's been the kind of best revision to how we've always done it in the past few years that you've seen?
Obviously, when we change things, or when I suggest changes, which are usually agreed upon, we always try and make sure it's for the better. That's the most important thing. Make sure it's for the for the better. In relation to the speeches and other things, and also proceedings within the lodge, sharpening it up, bringing it to a timely conclusion so it looks smart, it looks neat. As long as we're not taking away from what goes on in the lodge or the proceedings, I think it's quite important that we do have a look at these things on a regular basis. And because what we have to look at is how the world's changing, how membership's changing, how Freemasons are changing, and the younger ones. And the last thing we want to do, I mean, I joined the craft in 1991, so I've been in nearly 30 years now. I don't look old enough, obviously. I was only 4 when I started. But we've all been there, and we've listened to assistant provincial grandmasters who could go on for 25, 30 minutes. And best will in the world, you've lost them after 2 or 3 minutes. You really have. So you've got to think, what message are they actually getting across? They're not getting any message across. The only thing that they were getting across was the fact that they could waffle on for 25 minutes and bore people. And so we had to cut that down and make it relevant to the occasion. Also, you've got to think, a lot of people are working the next day. So the last thing we want to be doing is finishing Masonic meetings at 11, 12 o'clock at night, where somebody's getting home then at 1 o'clock in the morning, and we've got to get up for work the next day. By all means, if we finish the meeting by 9 o'clock, 9:30, those who want to stop on and have a drink in the bar, absolutely fine, fantastic. But it gives those brethren who do want to get away, and don't forget, a lot of people, big province, long distances to travel, it gives them the opportunity to get home at a reasonable time. In relation to the changes and who actually comes up with them and are they acted upon, usually what happens is at one of the DC's mess meetings, we get feedback from lodges and we talk about it, discuss it. I'll make a few draft plans, usually discuss it with Peter Taylor, then we discuss it with the provincial grandmaster, and normally the PGM just says, yeah, crack on, more than happy with it.
We've got a few DCs on today. I wonder, what is the thing that you would say to a DC, and what's the one thing that they can do to really make their role more effective within the lodge, and what's the one thing that they can do to perform better? I mean, obviously it varies from person to person, but is the one thing that you see time and time again that isn't quite right?
The main thing is preparation. The sooner you start preparing for a lodge meeting, whether that an installation or a ceremony, the more chance you have of it succeeding. It's as simple as that, the preparation. Sometimes you turn up and things aren't going to plan, and you think, is it down to preparation or is it just one of those things? But the sooner you prepare and the sooner you start planning, the more chance you've got of success. And that's, as DC, that's down to somebody who's delivering the working tools at, say, an installation. Let them know 6 months in advance. Maybe the meeting before the installation, if you've nothing on that meeting, let them go through the working tools. It'll give the worshipful master good opportunity to go up to the 3rd degree, and it'll give the brethren a good opportunity to deliver the working tools in the lodge environment, so it's not coming as a shock to them. So it's all about preparation, and there's lots of little things that you can do. And a lot of this is discussed at the DC seminars, which we do occasionally hold within the groups.
Yeah, we're certainly hoping to program a couple of actual interactive me there in person seminars with people, and like I say, and like you say, the DC's seminars often line up with those. So yes, it's certainly something that we are looking to do throughout when things get back to normal, if hopefully which will be relative soon. I've got a question from Scott Devine here. He was asking about the progression of DDC from craft to Royal Arch. And I know, for example, in Metropolitan Grand Lodge, they work the other way around. They progress from Royal Arch into the craft. The assumption being that the Royal Arch is an easier introduction or a warm-up into the slightly more regimented craft ceremonies. Any comment on that?
Yeah, we do it right. It's to be honest, after 3 years in the craft, where chances are you've done close on 200 meetings in the 3 years, it is nice to move to the Royal Arch, and there's less meetings, so it is a bit of a break, to be honest. And after 3 years, believe me, you really do need it. But also then you still carry on helping out in the craft. But it's just the way that we do it in West Lancashire. It seems to work well, and there's no appetite at the moment for changing that.
One thing, just on the progression, one thing that I've always found fascinating is the DC's wands and where they come from, and because you each, I think I'm right in thinking that when you get yours, that is yours and you keep it. It's not passed on to anybody or anything like that. I mean, how many wands are there out there?
There will be a few wands, but yeah, once you get presented with your wand, that is your wand, because as I said earlier on, you do continue being Adept DC once you've fallen off the perch, so you still need your wand. Now, there is a few which have been handed back to me. Mark Dimolo, who obviously once he became an assistant for Interim Master, had never needed again, so he handed his back. Dennis Rudd handed his back. So one or two do get handed back and recirculated. But that's it.
I don't know if I'm allowed to know this or not, but cutting off people's ties in the mess, is that something which actually does go on?
No, never seen it. It's a Masonic secret.
I see. All right. Okay. We'll save that we'll leave that as a mystery, shall we?
We shall indeed. But it keeps Bill Steadden happy.
All right. Okay. I see. There's a lot of perplexed faces, I think. It's Yeah, it's you do funny things in the DC's mess, don't you?
We do.
On speaking about the DC's mess, DC's mess versus Warden's mess. Discuss.
Well, the wardens are a mess generally, but is this going out live? But it's actually the Wardens Club which they have, and obviously we have a DC's mess, and there's a lot of banter between the DCs and the Wardens of the province. There's normally, as well as we know, each year 2 wardens get appointed, a senior and junior warden, and a new deputy DC, and they tend to grow up masonically during that year. There's a lot of visits where they're together, and they form a fantastic friendship. And there is a lot of rivalry and banter which goes on between the mess and the Wardens Club. But we never get invited to the Wardens Club, but we do invite the 2 wardens of the province, just as they're going out to the office, to the final mess meeting of the year, and they come along and they keep us entertained and buy us 1 or 2 drinks if they want to be popular, and that's it. So there is a rivalry, but it's very friendly. The wardens of the province, in general, do a fantastic job. They really do. Can you edit that bit out? You can.
What, about they're doing a fantastic job?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure nobody heard. It's fine. We're kind of running into time now, but I don't know if there's any, and I'm aware that I've asked a lot of questions, and I'm just wondering if there's anybody out there with plenty of with any questions going on. I can see Kevin pointing there. He's normally chomping at the bit to ask a question. Is there? And of course, Kevin, you were a DC, weren't you? Oh, Nigel Parrish has got his hand up. Let's speak to Nigel.
Just a question for Malcolm. I missed last week's meeting, Andrew, but the week before, somebody asked if there was an installation of just going to be a straightforward proclamation. Was there a form of words around to enable us to do that? I've only ever known a master proclaimed, then we appointed new people in offices, but we could, in our lodge, for example, just be simply carrying on for another year, leaving everybody where they are. And I just wonder if there is any form of words that would help us with that.
This is, can I just clarify something before bring Malcolm on that? Have you had your elections?
No, we haven't had that yet, Andrew. We've got a committee meeting next month in October where we'll be discussing what we do, whether we appoint a new master or we just carry on literally as we are into the new year with a proclamation leaving everybody in situ in the same office.
So when would your election meeting be?
That would be in December. And
your installation would be in January?
Is January, yes.
Okay, in that case, Malcolm, over to you.
Yes, basically, with a proclamation, there's no right or wrong way of doing it. But if you look on the website, there is actually a thing for proclamations under the ceremonial side, and that will talk you through something which I drew up 18 months ago, which has worked very well. And it'll basically, if you want to build your installation around that, that's probably the best way to go. So you can add in what you want to add in, take out what you want, but basically there is that. And it can use as you're proclaiming the worshipful master. Technically, there's no need to go up to the 3rd degree. There's no need for the working tools. There's no need for any addresses unless it's a new officer being appointed, say a new junior warden. By all means, do the warden's address. And but that'll give you an idea of how much you can do or how little you can do. And as I say, feel free to build on that. as I say, there's no set format for doing it, but this is something which has worked very well, and I've seen it work, and it does work well. It takes away nothing from the dignity of the evening.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great, Malcolm. Thanks for that. I shall have a look and pull that together, because as you said before with the DC, preparedness is everything. So I want to make sure that when we go to our meeting, our committee meeting, that I've got all the facts that I can put in front of the members, and they can make a proper informed decision. So thanks very much for that. I shall look that up.
Pleasure, Nigel.
Thank you, Nigel. Alan Brown from St Michael's on Wyre Lodge, you've got a question.
Yeah, hi Andrew, hi everybody. Malcolm, we know and always welcome chains and other distinguished guests when attending installations and other ceremonies. But apart from the sort of moral support that they provide and the fear that they tend to instill, not always, and the support they give to the occasion, what's the Masonic legal or constitutional function of the Provincial Grand Master or an assistant or anybody else attending? So do they have a role in that sense, or is it social support?
I mean, Andrew will probably go into the constitutional side more than I can, but when a chain-bearing officer attends your lodge, he attends in his own right. So that's why he can demand admission into the lodge, where a past chain-bearing officer or a grand officer request admission. When they come in, you offer them the gavel of the lodge, they'll take that, say a few words, and more than likely hand it back. Although I have seen on a few occasions, Kevin Poynton included, where they've decided to keep it and see where it goes, and it went very well, I can tell you that. But Andrew will tell you the constitutional side of it more than I.
So the Book of Constitutions puts the Provincial Grand Master obviously in charge of the province as a group of lodges, and he can make various other appointments, including appointing a deputy, and it is the number of assistants which he can, assistant Provincial Grand Masters, which he can appoint, is also dictated by the Book of Constitutions. In terms of what they are there to do, ceremonially, there's nothing in the Book of Constitutions regarding that. What it is, from the Constitution point of view, is an oversight, management, and ensuring the well-being of the lodges and brethren under the purview of the Provincial Grand Master. And obviously the assistants do assist the Provincial Grand Master in doing that, and the deputy is there to deputise as and when necessary with the Provincial Grand Master as well. So in terms of the ceremonial, there really isn't any constitutional position on that, other than he has all sorts of various different powers, including that to demand entry, and he can also empower by appointing them as deputy or assistant to have such same powers as he has in terms of admission into lodges. But once we have a lot of custom and practice in the province around it, and a lot of what you see at an installation or a ceremony is actually custom and practice rather than constitutional necessity.
Right, yeah.
So there are all sorts of different things at play, but essentially the function of the chain-bearing officers are to support the Provincial Grand Master as his genuine assistant, to assist in the oversight and the well-being of the brethren. Roy Murphy, I'll come to you in a second. Kevin Poynton.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Malcolm.
Hello,
I'm, as everybody may or may not no, I am a past Assistant Provincial Grand Master. I'm also a Deputy Provincial Grand Director of Ceremonies, because that's a role that you never relinquish, I have to say. When I was a young lad, I was one of a gang that was brought on by a guy called Jeff Block. I don't know if anybody remembers him. And when I recall being interviewed by Colin Penty-Wright, and he said to me, he said, well, you've asked your family and you've made sure that your family are happy with what you're doing. You've asked your father-in-law, because you knew my father-in-law very well. He said, and are you okay with work? He said, because your family and your work becomes before everything. And I said, yes, sir. And then Jeff Block, I had a few more words with the Provincial Grand Master. Jeff Block took me out and he said, now listen, what I want you to do is forget all that. He said, you are my child from now on, and you will work like no one else has worked before for the province. He was only kidding, but it led us to believe how busy a Deputy DC was. And I can say that someone asked a question before, I think it was Nigel, but it could have been Nigel, about when they accept, or it could have been Alan, when they accept an Assistant Provincial Grand Master, what are his roles and duties? Apart from those that have been already mentioned by Andrew Rydell, the main role of an Assistant Provincial Grand Master when he visits a lodge is to enjoy himself with the lads in the lodge. That's the top and bottom of it. There is no other prerogative. And if the DC of the lodge gets his bits right, and Malcolm will always refer to, like we all did, the 7 Ps, which is perfect and proper practice prevents pathetically poor performance. Now, pathetically is a word that I've had to insert because there's a 4-letter word that goes in between them. But that's, if you get your paperwork right, everybody has a happy night. And an Assistant Provincial Grand Master should never, ever whinge about the ceremonies, because he's there as a guest. And what they all do realise is that chains are very important in our province, but a chain is nothing without you guys. End of story.
Thanks,
The other thing is the 3 words that that a Deputy Provincial Grand Director of Ceremonies must always learn. 3 special words, and they are humility, humility, humility. Now it's the end of the story. Enjoy yourself. Stay safe.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Rob Murphy.
Good afternoon, Andrew and Mike. Sorry, Malcolm. Can I refer back to a previous question about installation without election? Our election meeting was in June, which was covered by the period of suspension. We arranged a emergency meeting for an election, and unfortunately that was abandoned due to local lockdown and not being able to meet the quorum. So our next meeting in October should be the installation. Am I correct in assuming that at this installation, because of that situation, it is a process of declaring Worshipful Master for the ensuing year?
Not entirely. You still need to hold elections. So actually, because the default position in the Book of Constitutions is that if you miss your election meeting, you have one, and there's more than 2 months between your election meeting and your installation meeting, you have an emergency meeting, which you tried to have. There is then less than 2 months between your election meeting because your emergency meeting didn't go ahead. And in those situations, you default to having your elections on what would have been your regular night of installation.
Right.
So actually your October meeting becomes your election meeting. If you elect a new master, he must be installed within 5 weeks of that election meeting, either at your next regular meeting, if it falls within that 5-week period, or at an emergency meeting. If the incumbent master is remaining in office, and this is a change to the advice which was previously given by us and Grand Lodge. This is a change. If the incumbent is elected as master-elect for the ensuing year, he automatically resumes that office. So, and no proclamation is required if that is happening on what would have been the night of installation. So if the election happens on what would have been the night of installation and the incumbent is continuing, by virtue of the election being declared in the incumbent's favour, he resumes office. Nothing else needs to happen, apart from him then proceeding to invest his officers.
Yes, that was the point really that I was trying to clarify. If he remains in office, he just remains in office. There's no election, no installation procedure to go through.
Correct. There is none whatsoever. By virtue of the result of the election being declared in the incumbent's favour, he automatically resumes office with no extra requirement or ceremonial around it. So effectively, the election for the Worship Master, the Treasurer and Tyler are conducted. And then the next thing that should happen before anything else, DC takes to the floor and inquires of the Worship Master who he appoints as Senior Warden. So the Master will declare the results of the election, and then of the elections, and then the DC will inquire who he appoints as Senior Warden, and the election and the appointment and investment of officers just takes place then. You can't presume the result of the election, so you can't place it on the summons, but that's the process that it goes through. So, and I must stress that this is only when it is happening on what would have been the regular night of installation after you have attempted to hold elections. So in your case, you're meeting in October, you hold the election, however you normally would do that, whether it's by declaration under Rule 105A of the Book of Constitutions, or whether you actually take a ballot, it doesn't matter. But by virtue of the result of that election being declared in the incumbent's favour, he automatically resumes with no other requirement or process. He automatically resumes in the chair.
That's great. Thank you very much, Andrew. That clarifies it all for me.
So, right. Andrew Makin, hang on, just let me unmute you.
Oh, am I unmuted?
You are. Yes, you are now, yeah.
So just to follow on from that then, because I did ask you a specific, obviously this is evolving. I did ask you a specific question on this at one of the previous meetings. Our Master has been in the chair already for 2 years. We meet at Urmston, so as far as I'm aware, we're still locked down. We were not able to hold our May meeting where we would have elected, like Brother Murphy, we would have elected our successor. We were intending to allow our current Master to run on, as we discussed before. Now obviously the situation's changed slightly. So can our current Master still run on? I've taken on board what you said to Brother Murphy, but can our current Master still run on?
If you are not able to hold elections,
yeah,
because
or if we have the elections on the night.
If you have the elections on the night, you need the dispensation in order to render the current Master eligible for election for a third year.
Right.
The dispensation for a third year in office is not a dispensation to install, it is a dispensation to elect.
Right, because
So-
previously you'd said that we didn't need a dispensation to continue under the special circumstances.
If the meetings are going to be abandoned and he's going to continue by Rule 107 or 108,
Yeah.
you don't need the dispensation. However, if you haven't yet had your election meeting, you need to have the dispensation to render him eligible for elections. Of course, if the election meeting is going to be abandoned,
Well,
it doesn't matter.
I think it probably will, because Urmston is still in lockdown.
But you need a dispensation in order to render him eligible for election.
Right, so I need to write to you for a dispensation.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Malcolm, I've got a question from Chris Taylor here. Just before I go any further with that, Chris, I hope you're doing well and recovering quickly. Talking of, I'm just reading this, so you can blame a fireman if the English isn't quite right. Talking of standards, especially in DCs or procedures, has consideration ever been given to appointing visiting officers to attend normal meetings, as in other provinces? Presumably, Chris, and I'm just trying to find you on the screen. Is that to, I see you now, is that to ensure to look at standards or prospective DCs? Both, okay. So Malcolm, what about putting spies in the camp, basically?
As in what?
Just to check up on people. I mean, it's the visiting officer role is often kind of the group chairman as such, isn't it?
Obviously, with, as I mentioned before about selecting who's going to be potential DCs, we will go and get them watched. We do get feedback. The DC's mess in West Lancashire, we're very, very lucky with it. We have a lot of experience and very good masons in there. And I'm more than happy that anybody from the mess can go along to a normal meeting and have a look, and they can give me feedback on that. But is that what Chris is alluding to?
No, it's not. It's I know speaking's a bit difficult for you at the moment, Chris. So maybe just type it open. We'll come back to that. Question from Brian Kendrick: can we still have candidates come for interview this year? I think Neil Ward, this may be a good question for you to answer. If I can find you, can you unmute, Neil? Okay, I'll come back to Neil. Jeff, you're unmuted now if you want to come in.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Bell. I'm the Director of Ceremonies at the Lodge of St Nicholas in Liverpool. My question, a couple really. We are due to meet our next meeting next Monday, September the 14th, which we have already abandoned, but we're going to hold an informal Zoom meeting on that night. Our installation is November. So going by what you just said, should we be holding elections at our September meeting rather than October? And secondly, most of us who would be attending the lodge anyway will be tuning into the Zoom meeting. So if you like, it will be a virtual lodge meeting. Now, is that permissible legally, masonically, if you like, then actually we'll have the same people at the Zoom meeting as we would at a physical premises?
It's not permissible. Do you have a meeting in October?
Yes, second Monday.
And is that normally your election meeting?
Well, going by what you just said, and it's 2 months before the installation, then really we should be holding our election meeting next Monday at the September meeting.
Your election meeting will be prescribed in your bylaws, and it will be the meeting before the regular meeting before your installation meeting.
Okay.
So it will be prescribed if you meet in October, it will be prescribed as the October meeting. So that's when you need to hold elections. What I was referring to earlier with the 2 months was where the election meeting has been missed because of the suspension or abandonment. So that's where I was, what I was talking about with that. But no, in your circumstances, the election meeting will be the regular meeting prior to your installation.
Yeah, that's fine. Now, we're planning to hold that meeting, Andrew, but if circumstances prevent us, what do we have to do as regards elections then in October?
So if the election meeting is abandoned, if you're not able to form a quorum, and a quorum is 5 brethren, plus a Tyler, and 2 of those 6 brethren in total need to be members of your lodge. If you're not able to form a quorum for that, you can, then that meeting will be abandoned and you will proceed to hold the elections on the night which would have been the regular day of installation.
Okay, that's fine. I think we should be back by November, but if not, I'm sure we'll be back on to you shortly.
Mark Smith, I can see you've got your hand up, but I'll just, Neil Ward, you're unmuted now. Can you just talk about interviewing candidates at the moment?
Yeah, there's no problem interviewing candidates, providing the Masonic halls are open and you're socially distant, etc., etc. What I am finding with the people that are waiting in the wings, so to speak, are that a lot of them are prepared to wait until they can have either the full ceremony followed by the festive board. They want the complete package rather than the mocked up affair that's come out from Grand Lodge. So, you know, you can interview the candidates, take extra time, include them in the Zoom meetings, the Lodge Zoom meetings, get to know them better. Most of them are prepared to wait until things are back to normal.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you. It's always handy to have a friend on hand. So yes, you by all means continue to interview candidates, and it's up to, providing you can do that in a safe and regulatory compliant way. Steve Smith from Symphony Lodge, I'm just unmuting you.
Just a quick question about the Form P.
Yeah.
Can it be filled in? One, can it be filled in online? And 2, can it be filled in, say, by the secretary and then signed by the candidate? Or does it have to be filled in by the candidate?
At the moment, forms still have to be filled in and wet signed by the candidate themselves in their own handwriting. We only have a year of this left. When Hermes comes in next year, that will all change. But for the moment, we are still looking at the old forms, which is filled in by hand and signed by the candidate themselves.
Does the candidate have to fill the full form in, or just sign it?
They have to fill the front page in themselves and sign it on the bottom of page 1 and the bottom of page 2.
Okay, thanks for that.
No problem. There was somebody waving at me before, and I can't remember who it was. Mark Smith. It was you, wasn't it? It's just unmute you.
Yeah, it was me, Andrew, Mark Smith.
Yep.
Hi, Andrew. Good afternoon, everybody. Question for Malcolm. First of all, thanks for all the support that you've given me over the last few years as the Director of Ceremonies at Brotherhood, Malcolm.
Pleasure.
And congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you.
Basically, obviously, there's a great deal of change in regards to what's going on with ceremonies, in particular installations, and we've got ours at Brotherhood on the 8th of October. And I'm conscious, obviously, about the social distancing and risk assessments and all the rest. In relation to the perambulations and proclamations, is that basically left on the initiative of the Director of Ceremonies, what he sees fit as to proclaim him from the east, south and west type of thing, west and south? Is the DC got the autonomy to basically conduct the ceremony which way he thinks fit for the master?
Is that just for the proclamations or in general?
Well, he's a new brother coming in, so it wouldn't be just for a proclamation. But what I'm saying is, would it be prudent so that we could cut the ceremony down in regards to entered apprentices coming in and fellow crafts, etc., master masons, so that we could just proclaim him after he's been proclaimed from the centre, so to speak, by the past masters? Could we cut that down and make it just another proclamation as opposed to bringing them separately because of the shortage of numbers and obviously, not being able to have many people attending the ceremony anyway? So what we're saying is, obviously, missing out the tools, for example, or some of the addresses. Could we miss a couple of the proclamations out, or would he have to be proclaimed from the other pedestals?
So are you on about, so once the Board of Installed Masters is closed, virtually closing straight down to the first degree, getting everyone in and then doing the proclamations? Under the current situation, I mean, I personally can't see a problem with it.
Right.
You're meant to proclaim them in all 3 degrees.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'm sure Andrew's probably looking through the book as we speak. But as I say, and as our telephone conversations have gone, to be honest, do what you really need to do. And as long as you don't go off kilter and off track and make it work and make it a good night for the worshipful master.
I mean, the fact is that he would be proclaimed anyway, but the fact is, obviously, with a shortage of numbers, the perambulations obviously have got to be limited. The amount of brethren we have in the lodge, and obviously, because he's a new brother coming in, we'd obviously like to do the full-blown ceremony, but which we can't. But I think it's important once he does the obligations, his address, the tools, etc., to him personally, if he can be proclaimed, perhaps again without doing it with entered apprentices and fellowcraft and the like. I don't know.
The usual format for this kind of thing would be once the brethren come back in, is and I now for the first, second, and third time proclaim him master of this lodge, and then resume work directly into the first degree, and then either at a later date do the other bits and pieces as a inverted commas demonstration, or do the whole thing. I mean, it, like you say, it depends on numbers and what's more appropriate at the time. But usually the format in this instance would be to proclaim them for the first, second, and third time master of the lodge, and then resume the labour directly into the first degree.
So what we're saying is, numbers permitting, and obviously bear in mind of social distancing, it would be beneficial to do all the proclamations as normal.
It's one of those things that really is down to custom and practice, and it's your call if you think you can accommodate that. And that's obviously a better experience.
Well, we'd like to.
If you don't think you can accommodate it safely, don't do it.
Okay, thank you very much, Malcolm and Andrew. Thank you for that.
So, I got another comment from Kevin Poynton, something else from Steve Foster, and then final words from Malcolm. Kevin.
Thank you, Andrew. This comment this question is primarily directed towards Neil Ward. Neil, you said earlier on that you've heard that some of the candidates would rather prefer to wait until it's all done properly. The question I would ask is, how do they know whether it's going to be done properly or not?
Well,
Now,
they haven't been told what the difference between the ceremonies are.
okay.
But
okay, so what I was going to say, and then you can jump in at me. It shouldn't be up to people to decide. I don't personally favour the current method, but it shouldn't be up to people to decide how they're going to initiate a brother, because that's already been decided for us. Our duty would be, if there's going to be someone initiating that lodge, is to make him as enthusiastic as possible a night. The only thing that we would miss out is the fact that he's not going to have the camaraderie at the festive board for all the brethren to welcome him in. But that can always be done on a later date. So what I'm saying is, should we encourage initiations to go ahead, and encourage the people that don't really think it's a good idea to get on with it and welcome him into the lodge?
Well, there is that, of course. Do you not think the festive board after initiation is a huge part of the initiation ceremony? Because I do. It makes for the whole evening. Like I said, they haven't been told what the difference in the ceremonies are. We wouldn't dream of doing that. We just say that there's no festive board. It's whole part of the evening, and we'll leave it to them. And then, of course, some lodges are nervous about doing the initiation ceremony the new way, or even going to the lodge room. You know, it's horses for courses. It's down to each individual lodge. It's down to each individual applicant. But generally, as a whole, most of them are saying they prefer to wait till they can have the complete evening rather than initiation and then going straight home.
Just on that, I was at a meeting this morning, and there is some discussions on that, because obviously, if lodges do want to bring an initiate into Freemasonry, we have the scope to do that. But what we have to ensure is that it's done, and it's done well, and it doesn't leave them with a bad experience. The last thing we want, and is on a cold, wet Wednesday in Lee, if they've not had the heating on, somebody going up there, cost them 300 quid, they walk around the lodge room with 7-8 people in, and then thanks very much, we'll see you next month. That can leave a bad taste, and the chances are you won't see them next month. Yeah. So we want to ensure that it's done right. So there is some work going on around that. So if an individual lodge does want to bring somebody in, and they have the means basically to look after them and to phone them up the next day, how was that, explain it, talk them through it, then hopefully the province will be able to assist with that in the next week or two.
Yep. Thank you, Malcolm. Just the question from Steve Foster regarding the dispensation for the treasurer. It will say at the next regular meeting. So therefore, if meetings are abandoned, it will just keep rolling over automatically. So you don't need to apply for dispensation each meeting. Just one will be fine. Stuart Cranage says he can't join the video chat, so we can all be thankful for small mercies. He's just looking forward and how positive things have been. So that's all good. Malcolm, thank you very much for taking the time. I was going to say out of your busy schedule, but now you're retired, you're slightly less busy schedule to be here. Congratulations on your retirement. Any final words?
Well, thank you very much. It'll be a short-lived retirement because I start with West Midlands Ambulance Service on Thursday. But but there we go. It'll keep me busy during these difficult times. But all I can say is it's an absolute privilege to be Deputy DC of the province of West Lancashire. And as Kevin said, it is about humility. We're not there to come in and overtake the lodge and the proceedings. We're there to work with you, and more importantly, make sure it's a good night. People go home happy, smiling, and more importantly, they want to come back the following month. And that is what it's all about, enjoyment. And but just on another note, if anybody has any questions to do with meetings in the future or any ceremonial side, you've all got my email, the mobile phones out there. Please give us a call, send us a message, and I'll do my very best to get back to you and find out the right answer, as will any one of the DCs, current or past. We're all there to help each other and to make sure that we enjoy our masonry.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. Thank you, and thank you, brethren.